Welcome to the Standards Education Talk. Today, we will dive into the pressing topic of how to empower future student leaders to navigate higher education and their future career paths. So to those who are watching, thank you so much for joining us. We're so thrilled to have you all here. And also joining us today is Mr. John Liu, Head of Careers and University Guidance and Student Development of YCYW Education Network. Welcome, John, and thank you so much for being here.
No, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity.
Yeah, thanks a lot. So I know that the YCYW approach to early childhood education is an educational framework that centers around 12 values of YCYW, such as children are capable and can be trusted, and also teachers and children construct learning together. And I also know that the YCYW's educational philosophy really emphasizes on character formation. For example, they highlight core traits like diligence, humility, and also respect. So with that in mind, my first question is actually about global university admissions, which I think a lot of parents are concerned about as well. So John, could you share with us more about what are the latest trends in global university admissions, and how does the YCYW approach to early childhood education actually prepare students for these kind of trends?
Right, that's a great question, and I definitely understand. The world of university applications changes very quickly, and is becoming a lot more globalized. So I think maybe that's actually one of the trends to start with, is that students are actually considering many different countries, many different places that fit kind of what their goals are for themselves and for their professions and for their life interests. I think another trend within universities is they're really looking for students to take a exploratory or entrepreneurial approach to their learning. What that means is they want students to be curious, to come to university with an idea of wanting to explore something new, to dig deeper. And when I use the word entrepreneurial, they're also looking for students to be able to connect different aspects or different majors or different learnings together in order to really come with a problem-solving approach. Right? Looking at a problem, understanding it deeply, understanding it from different perspectives, and then really suggesting a solution, being entrepreneurial. So how did that tie into what we are, about our values at the school? As you were sharing before, the foundations of any good educational system is believing that students can be change agents, they can be trusted. And we are all about co-constructing learning together, which means the students and the teachers together look at a situation, look at a problem, understand it together, and then create a solution together. And if you kind of see that co-creation, if we have that even in early childhood education, meaning even when students are playing, they're exploring what the world is around them, looking at different ways through their different senses to understand a very simple thing. Like, so for example, why is water flowing in a certain way? What does that flowing of water do? And having that conversation with teachers to understand it, they are exploring something together, co-creating something together. And if, let's say, that flow of water causes an issue, how do they want to change and resolve that problem? Same thing. So those very simple things of just looking at flowing water, how it affects, actually, if you were to fast forward that into the future, it actually is about allowing students to be college ready, right? They get to be really deep exploratory learners. They're entrepreneurial, looking at problems together. So that's how we try to really help our students explore. When we create our ECE programs, our goal is not to get them ready for university, right? Our goal is to get them ready to be learners, to be curious. But in doing so, and in cultivating and fostering that spirit, we are actually preparing them for long-term success.
So you've just talked about how the YCYW approach helps students to be college ready. So how can junior high school students effectively plan for their future studies? For example, like when should students start planning, and when does the Career and Guidance Office start to work with these students?
Yeah, so I would recommend for students, one, to just be curious about the world around them. That's one. Two, to plan and not be nervous. I think sometimes we expect our kids to grow up way too fast. I remember when I was 12 and 13, if you're going to ask me what job I wanted to do, I would have no idea. But if you would have asked me what I enjoy learning, what I enjoy doing, what I enjoy spending my time, I probably would have something to say. So I would say for our junior, our lower secondary or junior high students, what do you enjoy doing? Like, what do you enjoy spending your time doing? What is there something about the world that you see that makes you curious? Is there an issue in the world that you feel like, man, this is really unfair, I wish I can make a difference? Start with that. Start with things that you feel like you can understand the world better with, and there's so much information online, right, to start learning in that way, but also just start having conversations with the people around you. Start having conversations with your teachers. Start having conversations with the other adults around you to kind of learn the kind of different dynamics of what you're interested in. As you start to understand that, actually then your focus about where your career or your university will start to evolve throughout your junior high. So we always want students to explore things they're interested first. Once you get into high school, then you can start to think about what classes align with those interests, and then build that going forward. For our students at YCYW, we're very, very fortunate that our career and university counselors have an opportunity to be a part of our students' learning journey from lower secondary. So for example, our schools will have assemblies, we'll have different learning projects for us to start to engage our lower secondary students. More importantly, we also have this really great program called the Ed Futures program. So they're a part of our super curricular program. So in addition to what students learn within the school, they also have a chance to learn about that more deeply outside of school. So for example, a program that's happening in November is our underwater robotics program. It's a really cool program where students literally go to one of our schools and they just work together as a team to build these very, very cool robots in the pool to kind of solve these problems. But in doing so, our students are actually having an opportunity to learn, this is actually a type of engineering. Or even if you're not interested in it, this is how we problem solve. This is how we work together as a team. And it's just something that's really, really fun. So our career university counselors, not only help to get our students to think about themselves, but also, suggest these really cool programs that they can do. Once our students get into upper secondary, what we consider year 10, year 11, year 12, and 13, we have a very formal program with those students. So we have a class in which students a curriculum in which students take. So for example, in year 10, the focus on that curriculum is actually getting students to become high school ready, helping them transition from their junior high learning to their high school learning. And then also for students to start understanding what's the difference between a job and a career. To start understanding what are the different university majors that are out there, right? So they can really start to have a beginning exploration of in a formal classroom setting about what are the choices that are in front of them. In our year 11 curriculum, actually is all framed around career exploration. So, our students come in, for example, just in the beginning learning about what are the various careers that are there. What do I think of, where do I want to go when I'm maybe 30? And then through that process, students will learn about different careers and which universities help them get there. They'll have a chance to actually even learn how to write resumes, cover letters, practice interviews. So a lot of the skills you would need for careers. We also invite different companies to come in to give career talks to our students. And actually many of our schools, we actually have a job shadow program at the end of year 11. So they do a 2-week job shadow at a company. And they learn about the world of work. And then in year 12 and 13, it goes all into our career and university guidance focus. So, our students start to get one-on-one counseling with our counselors. And then also within the class, they learn about all of the nuts and bolts about how to apply to universities, from how to look at what requirements are for different universities, to helping them really think about brainstorming essays, to practicing interviews, et cetera, et cetera. So that's how we get our students ready.
Thank you, John. You give a very detailed explanation of how the school actually helps students to explore their interests and help them to realize what they really want. And I agree with you about it's very important to have the opportunity to speak with different people around you so that you can really know that what you want. And I really appreciate that the school provides a lot of programs for students to explore their interests. So speaking of global university admissions, I know that there is an increasing number of people applying for university overseas. So as the number of applicants for studying abroad increases, how can students really differentiate themselves from the growing pool of applicants? And also, how do you help students to present a compelling story of themselves to the examiners to really help them them to learn about their background and their interest?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it goes back to what I was sharing about before, about your question about getting students to think about what they're doing already in junior high school. I want to start off by saying that the most important thing that students need to understand when they're applying for universities is that it's not a prize to be won, right? It's just your next step in your education. So what you want, what your goals are, like who you are really important to this process. I understand that for our families, like rankings and name recognition is important. I understand that. But that really is only an element of how do I get myself to think about which universities are right for me. I always tell students in a funny way, like when you think about universities, you kind of want to think about it as dating somebody for 4 years, yeah? Do you want to date somebody just because they're popular for 4 years? Or do you want to date somebody because you really know what that person is about? Hopefully, most people choose the second one, which is to really know what that person's about, and that person is the right match for you. So same thing I would say that students should think about the university selection process, and then also how to make sure that they are the right fit. Because all universities actually have very, very clear mission statements about what is the mission of their universities. Some is about service, some is about leadership, and so it's very, very clear. So the first thing that students need to do is like look at what the purpose of what that university is there for. Then look at what are their quality of their programs, how do they learn, how do they teach, what are the additional things that the school does that provide maybe learning or research for that student. Because once the student knows kind of what that university is like, then they can see like actually does it match what I am interested in myself. So let me take that example of the underwater robotics, right? How do we get, so your question was like, how do we get students ready? Well, we get students ready by allowing them to try different aspects of our super curricular activities to expose them to new learnings within the classroom. And really for students to kind of then reflect about each experience and think about, well, if I enjoy the underwater robotics, what's the next thing that I can do that increases my learning? Or sometimes that can just be, for example, we also build up students in their student leadership. So if I want to learn to lead, what are the things that help me lead to make a difference? Also, it's a big part of our school is also about service and care, like providing community service, making a difference. Some students, that's important for them. And as they explore these different things, then students actually find the elements that they have more of a, quote, interest or passion for. Then when they write that story for themselves about why they're interested in something and then what are their experiences, it comes together because it's authentic. And it's not about painting a picture of myself, but just talking about who I am, my experiences, and why I enjoy what I enjoy. And so the combination of our programming and then also our counselors helping our students think about, which courses to take, which extracurriculars to do, like think about which university systems are the best fit for them. We guide them through considering all these things. As we do that also, then we allow the students to have a moment to reflect about themselves, and then when in their writings, in their applications, make sure that they highlight the authentic things about themselves, but also we help them to make sure that they communicate that in the best way possible. So I think my overall advice would be for students to don't worry, especially the younger you are, try different things. See how those different, whether you enjoy or don't enjoy something that you do is always learning, right? So even let's say you have a work experience or a certain experience, you're like, oh man, I really didn't like that experience. Don't just think about why you didn't like it, think about how come, what about it didn't you like? And then so this helps you kind of formulate like, okay, maybe I don't want to do things with these elements, but other elements I want to try in the future. And I would also, because those things are not only important for the university part, but it's important for you to know that for the rest of your life. Because there's no one clear path that everybody goes. There's always choices that you take, and every journey is something to learn and to explore. And if you know the skill sets about how to select those journeys and how to learn from those journeys, then you have a kind of lifelong path to success.
John, I really like how you compare choosing the right university with dating. I think it's really correct. And at the same time, I really appreciate that there are a lot of programs for students to try, because I think it's very important to explore your own interests. And a lot of students will be concerned about what if I don't like the programs, what if it doesn't suit me. But what you just mentioned, the most important thing is to try again, because it's important to know what you want, to choose what is good for you. And also, I mean, for for global university admissions, I think what is most important is to paint a true picture of your true self, not to like paint a picture of making up like things that you don't really want. So I think that's very important. And so for those students who are interested in applying for specific subjects, for example, like fine arts, which might require like specific submission of art portfolios, how will the schools and also the Korean Guidance Office help? For example, in terms of like social, emotional support and also like academic wise?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think there's an actually growing number of fields or professional fields that are related in the fine arts or in design. So to answer your question, we, through our IB art programs, right? So it starts with actually our university counselors. Once we know that the students are interested in, let's say, fine arts or design, we help them with their subject selection. So we'll guide them to say, in the IB curriculum, then we think you should take visual arts at the higher level, because it's not only about, so if you ever look at what the portfolio is, actually some people think the portfolio is about the finished product, right? Like my finished painting, but actually universities, when they're looking for the portfolios, is not actually focusing primarily on the finished product, but the research and the creative process. So IB Visual Art is really great about teaching students about how to research, how to take an idea from concept to plan it out and then make it a final piece. So first, the curriculum helps our students with the portfolio. Two, we actually have a art and design. We have a Yawa Art and Design School specifically for art and design in Shanghai. So the whole school's curriculum is about fashion and art. And within that curriculum, we have CUGOs who actually have a lot of experience giving student feedback about their art portfolios. In fact, we have we call a specialist for art and portfolio guidance. And so so although she's not in Hong Kong, the great thing about our Korean University Counseling Network, we actually have 32 counselors across all of our schools within YCYW schools, and we work very, very closely. So let's say you're a student who wants to get feedback about your art portfolio. Although our counselors here in Hong Kong may not have the background in art portfolio feedback, our counselors within Yawa AD will actually happily meet with the students and give them feedback. So we have that internal expertise. In addition to our internal expertise, we also have external expertise, meaning we also know a lot of university admissions officers, especially for the fine arts. And what we will do is we will run workshops. We will invite, let's say, the admissions officers from Rhode Island Institute of Design, RISD. They will come and actually they will tell students this is actually what we're looking for in our portfolio. And also, in fact, they will actually, when they are with the students can actually bring their portfolios, and the school will give them feedback right away, right? So that's our external expertise. So we guide the students along that path. So that's for the portfolio. I think for the social and emotional support, I think it's really important. I think, and we provide that, I think, not only for just our students applying for art, but I think for all students. A big part of our philosophy at the school is really centering students' well-being and their sense of self. As part of the Career University Guidance Program, the CUGO, I realized I used our acronyms without giving everyone what that meant. We actually, our Career University Guidance counselors are also part of our student wellness or student support teams. So we're also part of our counseling teams, our counseling programs, to really have what we call like the adults around the child. So we are really trying to look at what are the needs of our students that they go through. Sometimes it's very heavily pressurized high school learning process. And how can we work together to make sure that our students' lives, their wellness are centered and balanced. So let me give you an example of a practice that we do to ensure students' well-being. And sometimes students or parents may not see it this way. One of the things that we institute is that we actually have an application limit, which means students can only apply to a certain number of applications. So we have a 10 application limit, but that doesn't mean that the students apply to 10 schools only, because for example, if they apply to the UK, that's 5 universities, but only 1 application, right? If they apply to the University of California schools, it's 1 application, but they can apply to 9 schools. The reason why we set that limit, because sometimes students are like, why can't I apply to 25 schools? Because it takes time and energy and effort. And you have to balance your applying with your schoolwork, with your social life, with your home life. So we want to put in a framework that tells students, one, center your well-being, because make sure you have enough time to take care of yourself. But two, the more applications you do, the quality of your applications go down. It's just a function of time, right? And also, in addition to that, universities have given us the feedback, because we have very close relations with the university. They'll say, we actually appreciate application limits because we know that you have professional counselors making sure that students are just not randomly applying to any school. But when they're applying to our school, they've done the deep thinking, the research, and the applications of quality. So for example, that's one professional practice that we do, that one helps students make sure that their applications are strong, but also centered around maintaining student well-being. They have the framework to make sure they take care of themselves and spend time with family and also enjoy just being a teenager.
Yeah, I think it's very good that the school actually has like internal and also external expertise to provide to students like the essential help and also support for them to choose what they want, and also like for them to explore new things. So I'm also curious, because you've just mentioned a lot of like different programs or activities that the CUGO provides for students. Are there any like notable ones, like programs or activities that you would like to mention that the CUGO provides to help students better prepare for their higher education, or also like real world settings?
Yeah, absolutely. I first want to go back to what I talked about, the Ed Futures program,
Yeah.
although we have a whole separate division. But for example, we don't just offer programs on our own. We partner with the other great programs our schools provide. So the Ed Futures program that you call is those special like research programs, like the underwater robotics. Within that program also there's a smart medicine program. So students that are interested in medicine, we encourage them to do that. So that's one aspect. So I think I want to really highlight that as an organization, we work collaboratively across and try to give students really all the different opportunities that we offer. But internally within just our CUG programming, I can share a few. One of the ones that we do is we have what's called the Advanced University Preparation Program, the AUP. So for students, let's say as early as year 11, that say they want to, for example, are interested in going to Oxford or Cambridge, right? We actually have a specialized program which those students can go to, and they actually start to prepare for that kind of learning process. So what does that look like? That means they sit and start to read some of the foundational books that we know that they expect students to be able to read. Yeah. Aspects in philosophy, classical thought, and also we have a teacher that helps them build that discussion. And in fact, we'll invite professors to come actually to give lectures to those students. A part of the AUP actually happens in our Somerset campus in the UK. So as a part of that program, they'll go to our Somerset campus in the UK and then also visit some of those universities as well. So it's a very kind of long-term kind of support for our students to make sure that they're ready for that, for those selective applications. Maybe to follow within the same path. So let's say our students apply to Oxford and Cambridge, right? And they are invited for an interview. We provide specific interview preparation for our students. So it means we will actually invite guest interviewers to do mock interviews with our students. So we're very fortunate that we have 90 years of history. We have a lot of our students that have gone to Oxford and Cambridge and so forth. So we actually invite those students to come back and be mock interviewers for our current students. We'll ask members of our staff actually to do mock interviews for our current students. So we also kind of prepare them in that way as well. So so in addition to like Cambridge and Oxford interviews, also with our students that are studying medicine, we will do like mock, what's called MMI interviews, which are kind of the medicine interviews just to get students prepared. In addition to that, something else we have in place is we have for students that apply to, for example, Oxford and Cambridge, or to apply early decision to selective universities, we have in addition to our counselors that support within the school, we also have an elite application team, another team of counselors that does a second read of students' applications, teacher recommendations, our own counselor recommendations, just to make sure that they're of quality. If there's something that's missing, that the students can all highlight, just so we have another layer of support and feedback for students. So so those are some of the things just a few of the things that we provide. I know I talked about our job shadow program too. That's also really important, but I'm sure I'm also missing many things, but those are some of the examples.
Mm-hmm. So John, so far we've talked a lot about students and also about the school. So I know that parents also play an important part in children's educational journey. So how can parents actually contribute to their children's learning journey, and how do YCYW schools encourage and support parents' participation?
Yeah. That's a great question. I think oftentimes, how bringing parents along this journey is sometimes forgotten. That realize that when students are thinking about planning and applying for universities, we a lot of times will educate the students, but realize actually we need to educate the parents, sometimes even more, right? Because the parents don't have the context, because maybe in their own backgrounds they didn't study abroad, so they don't really know what this all means. So within each of our schools, we have a very structured parent workshop or parent education programs to let our parents learn about all of the different kind of applying to different countries, all of the aspects. So we have a specific curriculum for parents to join. It is open to any of our parents of any age. So your child could be in ECE, but we invite them to come. So my advice to parents is it's always okay to prepare early. Just learn about what the trends are. Come take part of this learning process. Because as you're learning, actually, then you're equipping yourself to better guide your children, right? And also, as you come to our workshops, you get to know who our university counselors are, and our counselors are happy to meet with parents one-on-one if they have questions, regardless of what age they are in. As long as you're part of our community, right? Our counselors are here for any of our students, any of their parents. So that's how we get our parents and prepare our parents. Of course, when our students are in year 12 and year 13 are actually applying, the parents are always asked to join our meetings with students as we're planning. And so we have a very structured process, and that we make sure that our parents are involved. I would say my advice for parents is, when you're going on this journey with your children, be honest with them. Meaning, what are your goals for your children, and why are those your goals? It doesn't mean, I don't think you should enforce your goals on your kids, but at least be honest with your children about this is what's important for me and here's why. Because you need to be clear. Also be clear about, for some parents, your financial situation. What is it that we can afford that's right for our families, that's a good fit for our families. So have that conversation. I would recommend that parents do not do something like this. Say I'll use myself, I was speaking to John. John, if you get into Columbia, because it's a topic, don't worry about the money, I'll pay for whatever it is. But if you get into school B, like University of Virginia, sorry, I won't pay for it because it's not ranked high enough. That actually is really, really not helpful for the student, because they don't really know what that means. All they understand is just this, because the school's ranked higher, the school's name. It doesn't mean that you can't have that conversation. You can say John, if we go to Columbia, because it costs so much to go here, we need to think about what our return on investment is. So when you leave, what is our plan about what career you're going to do? So those are questions. That's a conversation you can have with your children, because you're sharing with them what's important for you, also helping them to consider okay, it's an investment of my time and money to go to this school. What should I consider when I come out? Is it worth my investment? So, University of Virginia is a fantastic school. So, just as an example for parents to just not to, because it's sometimes very easy for parents to be if you get into these Ivy League schools, then I'll pay for it. But these other schools, no, that's not helpful. Yeah. What is helpful is maybe talking through why, and also for parents to realize that they need to be open-minded, they need to grow. What is it that they're assuming, and maybe they just got wrong, right? If they have any questions, we have professional career and university guidance counselors at all of our schools. Ask them, come and speak to them and say hey, I heard from the outside, cause also there's, private company or agencies outside, and some of them are fine, but some of them maybe have some practices that try to scare parents to buy their products, right? I've heard agents, for example, say in order to go to US schools, I must go to a US boarding school, or I must be in an AP program. Is that true? Actually, that's completely not true. You can ask any university in the US, they'll be no, that's absolutely not true. But we have professional counselors here to help parents with those questions. So if they're hearing things, come talk to us. Ask about if that's true or not. And if they don't believe us, we'll share with them resources like the admissions officer of University of Virginia. You can ask them directly. But that's what I would say parents can do, to be curious, don't assume, and be on that learning journey with their kids.
I like what you said about like be curious, don't assume. And I also think that it's very important for parents to sit down and have a conversation with their kids to know, to align their expectations and like what you said, to know what they think and their financial situation. And also it's also very important to respect the children and their choices. So I would also like to talk more about like service learning and like community initiatives.
Yes.
So are there any examples of service learning and also community service initiatives that the schools have?
Yes, absolutely. We have a lot of great service learning projects across all the schools. Each of them individually we have a service learning coordinator at each school in which I work with to implement service learning programs for all the schools of all the different ages of our kids. So our service learning program actually had our own YCYW service learning framework, which is based on our mission, but it's also based on the compassionate systems framework, which comes out of MIT. And within that framework, so even as some, the compassionate system framework is about helping students build compassion, build relationships. So sometimes we think about service learning, we think about, we have to go to another country or out somewhere like far to do service. But actually sometimes you could do service just right in your school. Being a good friend is service, you're showing care. Listening, it's showing service. So at a very young age, when we teach our kids to listen, we're also teaching them that it's service, right? Because sometimes we don't realize that. So of course we do, also as they get older, have these very formalized, more going into the community, doing service, starting mentorship programs within their school. So every school has their service coordinator that, kind of using our service learning framework, works within the community, and throughout the community to do service projects. So I'll give you an example for our school in Shanghai. For example, one of the service learning projects, they started something called Lily Time Cafe. So Lily Time Cafe is a cafe that everybody that works there is deaf and mute. And so because actually there's a need for employment to serve those people that are disabled within China. So this great organization, Lily Cafe, just hires people that are deaf and mute, and they're actually the baristas. They make the coffee. So what our students actually do is they actually learn sign language. So when they learn sign language, once a week they go to this cafe, and actually they serve as the receptionist in the beginning because they take the orders of the people coming in, and then they will actually sign to the baristas to make whatever that is. And so it's not just about, taking the orders, sharing the coffee. It's about understanding and building relationships with these people that are deaf mute that they would have never had, right? Understanding actually there is this need in countries of people that have these disabilities that need the support, and what organizations like Lily Time can do to support them. And it really helps our kids think about, again, that entrepreneurial mindset, right? Sometimes we think of entrepreneurship as only in business, but entrepreneurial mindset is also for social enterprises and making a change. So it really helps them think through that. So that's an example of what we have in Shanghai. But also we have, within our service learning, we have a foundation-wide initiative called our Seeds of Hope Schools. So our Seeds of Hope Schools are schools in which we partner with and support in various parts of China. So one of our Seeds of Hope schools are actually schools in Liangshan in Sichuan province. And and the Seeds of Hope schools that we partner there, they support students that are from the Yizhu minority group. So what we do is in our Seeds of Hope schools and our Seeds of Hope service programs is we will bring our students from our various campuses, secondary students from our various campuses to that school, and there we'll actually go and teach after school activities, work with the students that are there, and also learn about the fantastic Yi culture. So, we bring our students to go and to learn, and for us, service learning is not about feeling like, there's a group of people that have less than us and we're helping people that have less. Actually, it's not about that. So that's called like thinking they have a deficit mindset. That's not where our students to do. We want our students to realize that no matter when we do service, both sides are learning. It's about relationship building and compassion and understanding each other and building that connection. So our Seeds of Hope schools, for example, is another service learning project that our students are involved in. They get to learn to be teachers. They get to learn amazing things about the Yi culture, but they also get a chance to learn about, okay, what are some of the needs within that community and within that society that they would have never seen just being in a major city within other parts of China.
Yeah, I mean, I would also like to highlight the importance of like having the chance for students to engage in service learning, because I think it's very important, like apart from the classroom setting, for students to explore and also to learn to build relationships and also interact with people outside of the classroom. For example, like service learning, community initiatives, and extracurricular activities. It's very important that for them to have these kind of opportunities so that they can grow apart from like just reading books, just like preparing for examinations. Apart from what you've just mentioned about like so many programs, what do you think is the most important thing, or what are some things that students can actually learn and gain from these like service learning experiences? And going back to our global university admissions topic, how can these experiences contribute or provide them with the experience or help them to get into the universities that they want?
Okay, that's a good question. So maybe I can talk through this through one of the tools that we actually teach our students through our service learning framework. And it's a common tool that we probably all heard of, which is like kind of like the iceberg model, right? So let's say when our students are doing a service, so for example, let's say Lily Time. Okay, so if we go to Lily Time and students see that there are these people that are working there that are just deaf mute, so they're seeing the tip of the iceberg, they're noticing that there's an issue. Actually, as we go through service learning, we try to bring students deeper into the iceberg to try to help them really understand like why this issue occurs. So for example, if I see that there's a need for people that are deaf mute to find employment, the next question is, what are the patterns, what are the things within the system, the society that causes them not to find this type of employment? Is it because there's no resources there? And then we go deeper, like, so if there's these no resources there, what do they say about, what are some of the fundamental beliefs maybe that society has about this? And, or maybe then also, like, then we go deeper, it's like, what are maybe some of the biases that I may have towards it? So through that iceberg model, they may be looking at one incident, but we, with our kind of compassionate assist framework and our tool, help students to think deeper. Once you get deeper into this, then each level you can then think about going back to that entrepreneurial mindset, like what are some of the solutions that I can suggest that I can take part in to understand this better or to solve, right? So from a simple activity like Lily Time, actually what students are learning is actually to understand, problem solve, think about which elements they have to research, thinking about their own bias. That is crucially important for what you would need to do any kind of deep learning at university, right? Because you're going to be looking at trying to solve many, many different problems. So that's a deep thinking model, but also the other thing is that it really helps students build empathy. And I think especially in the social media world that we live in, where a lot of our lives are just online, a lot of times we feel like we need to maintain this perfect image of ourselves. But actually there's a lot of difficulties in the world. And I think the more students engage in people and hear different stories, learn different experiences, they really build empathy. And they realize like, oh, actually, I don't need to feel so nervous about maintaining this perfect image of what's going on and what's happening, but actually there are the needs of other people that I should think about. And then when I make an impact in their lives, it actually makes me feel a lot better, and I don't have to just always be thinking about myself, right? So that empathy building is really important, especially when students are going to new environments in a university, because when they go to a new place, they're going to encounter many new things that are new. So how can I have empathy and compassion, understand systems, and like try to understand these things? It's interesting you said it, because a lot of times students that will start with, when I ask students, why are you doing this service? They're like, oh, because it looks good on my university applications. And I'm like, actually, that's not necessarily the case. Universities don't care if you did a service. They want to look at what you've learned and how you've changed and how you've grown, right?
That's correct, yeah.
So it's, and then that comes across, so when students have to write these essays about what makes them who they are, where their passions come from, when they have their own experience and story to talk about, it actually makes them more authentic and then more real. Going back to that same theme. So I think fundamentally service learning makes you a more deeper thinker, compassionate person, and also gets you college ready, but also will also help you within that whole aspect of your applying to university. And more importantly, once you're at university in your career, those important things of compassion and problem solving you take with you, and then help for students. So I think we're all looking for job satisfaction. And the research article always says that people feel the most job satisfaction when they feel a purpose in the work that they do. And when they go to work, they feel like they're making a change for something, right? So starting from service learning, actually, that is exactly a way of thinking or a model of when students thinking about careers, about, okay, when I get this job, yes, salary is important, all these things are, but like, what impact am I doing? What deep meaning does this job mean for me? Because that will actually sustain me to enjoy this job, but also be curious enough to look for other opportunities.
Yeah, so John, apart from Lily Tam that you've just mentioned, when I was doing my research online and also like talking with like different parents and also schools, I know that YCYW schools, they have a lot of like diverse range of events for students and also the bunch of like programs that you've just mentioned. For example, like visits to dementia care centers,
yes,
and also ecological farms, and
yes,
also leadership workshops.
Yes.
So can you tell me more about like these activities and also what kind of like expected outcomes that they have apart from like empathy and also
sure,
learning outside of the classroom?
I think maybe I'll give you an example outside of those I would mention. So even for our primary students, so for example, in YCS, in our Hong Kong campus, built within their curriculum, actually, which is fantastic, because you always want service learning to be part of the curriculum. They have, within their year 6 cohort, the students have a chance to try to understand a group of people that have certain aspects of certain disabilities, right? So what happens, for example, in Hong Kong, the students look at what those people may have certain disabilities, they actually work together to create a product to help them with the needs that they may have. So for example, if you have difficulty walking, seeing when you go, the students will look at that problem and create a product for that. So built within our curriculum is a chance for students to create new ideas and make a change. So that's one thing that I think I want to highlight. I think so that's like an outcome of which students actually create something and feel good about themselves. When talking about student leadership, actually we have within our student leadership programs, we actually have something called the Student Leadership Certificate Program. So it's actually it's a 3-tiered program and the goal of that program is to give our students the tools actually to know about leadership. Oftentimes we tell students, oh, you should go out and you should lead something, but actually, we don't teach them how, right? You would never ask a student to go into a chemistry lab to do a chem experiment without teaching them, like, this is how a Bunsen burner works. So we realized we needed to take the same approach. We needed to train our students to give them the tools that they need to go through different levels of leadership, and also, most importantly, to try those tools in various projects of leadership. So how our Student Leadership Certificate Program works is, there is students that are interested in the program, they sign up, they come in for a full-day workshop. And during that workshop, we'll explore 10 various leadership tools. So a leadership tool, for example, could be, what is your leadership style, right? So are you a distributive leader? Like, do you is that approach that you take? Are you an empathetic leader? And what does that take? So based on the 10 various leadership tools we teach students, then we ask students to select 2 tools that they're going to do an action project for the rest of the academic year. So they have 1 year that they need to show that they're practicing these tools in any kind of project that they're doing within the school or within the community. So that could be like when I'm leading a group project in my classroom, how am I using leadership styles, for example, and how did it work? Did it work for me? And then just, if it worked well, why did it work? If it didn't work, why didn't it work? And so throughout those projects, they actually are given a coach. So a coach meets with them. Sometimes that's me, sometimes that's the teacher at the school, to help them think through that project. So once you're done with one level, for example, the first year, the foundation level, you do your action project and you complete it. Then next year you go to the next level, the more advanced level. So you learn new tools and you do that again. So after the three tiers, we feel like then each of those tiers give our students the training that they need to be successful leaders. And the important part about that, those action projects allow them to make that difference in the community right now, right? Mm-hmm. They're doing it, and there's a coach that's helping them along to do that. So that's one part. We have that Student Leadership Certificate Program. That's for aspiring leaders. We also do something for leaders that are currently already leading. So we have something called the Senior Leadership Retreat. So for all of our school students who are, let's say, already in positions of leadership or senior leadership within the school, we have a 3.5-day retreat where we invite all of our senior leaders from all of our YCYW campuses, our student leaders, to come for a 3.5-day retreat along with their teachers. And we do a team building, leadership training, and most importantly, they get a chance to share their action plans and their plans with all of the other student leaders of all of our YCYW schools. And they are able to get feedback from those students. So those students are like, hey, that's a great idea, but have you considered this or have you considered that? And also what that retreat allows is for students to have synergy. It's like if you have a great program at your school that you're doing this, like that's actually something I want to do. Like, hey, let's actually work together, although one school's in Shanghai, one school's in Beijing, but it's okay, we can work together and it's something that we can build upon together. So yeah, so those are examples of something that we do to build student leadership, to give them the tools and also the network and the agency for them to lead.
Yeah, so John, today, during this episode, we've covered a lot of different topics. For example, global university admissions, service learning and community initiatives, and also like how can parents better participate in their students' educational learning journey. So I know you're very good at giving advice. So my last question for the day is, do you have any interview tips to share with the audience?
Yes. So I would say first, as an interview tip, is always good to practice. Yeah. So I think just looking at so actually with for example with the use of AI now, AI is a great tool. So actually, in fact, our school has our own AI platform. So what we, for example, the students that are, let's say, going on an interview, what we'll help students do is like how to use AI to help me practice, right? So for example, if I'm doing a medical interview, I will say, okay, use AI to say what are the common questions they'll ask. And AI will let you know. And then we can help students to kind of practice. But then actually we'll take one of those questions and say, okay, this is my response. What are the feedback that AI can give you? And actually, with us and AI, it can give that feedback. So there's many different ways that they can use technology now to practice. But at the end of the day, I think also, maybe this is the tip that for interviews, the more interviews you do, the better you become. Kind of about going back to the authenticity. The more practice you do, you find your voice, you find who you are, you find what you want to say clearly. And also, every interview that you do, whether it's good or it doesn't work out, it's okay. It's something that you learn from, right? And so I would say in those interview points where you felt like, oh, I didn't do it as well or I could have done it better, good, think about how, practice it more and look forward to your next interview.
I mean, yeah, you're correct. Practice makes perfect. And also it's very important to learn from your own mistakes as well. So I think we've covered a lot during this episode. And I'm so glad that John is here to join us during this educational talk. So this is the end of the episode. Stay tuned and see you next time. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.